Alrighty, my fellow old rollers, welcome to the podcast, Mr. Vlad Koulikov, one of my personal heroes, a guy I've learned a great bit from, and happy to hear some of your ideas on training. I know you're going to have some interesting things to say.
I just might, or maybe not that very interesting.
Yeah,
Depends.
I didn't expect you to be humble, Vlad. So you gotta bump up the.
Oh my goodness! If grappling teaches you anything, humility. Humble
Oh yeah, that's.
the most delicious meal ever.
You make a pretty solid point. So for my listeners and guests that aren't familiar with you, why don't you give us a brief introduction to yourself, and then kind of your martial arts career and where you started and what got you into this crazy thing we all love to do so much.
Got you. I'll try to make it brief. My name is my legal name is Vladislav Koulikov. Oh, obviously, nobody calls me Vlad. My coach started to call me Vlad, and it took off. So my name is Vlad Koulikov, 45 years old. I started my martial arts training in Sambo wrestling back in 1984 in a very famous and prestigious Sambo academy in the world called Sambo 70.
Uh-huh.
So my first introduction and rigorous training was done in Sambo, and then by osmosis, so to speak, judo, and later on in life, submission grappling and jiu-jitsu. Well, I also fought MMA, so kickboxing and things of that, and boxing came in too. But I presume the interest was about grappling, so this is the topic I'll stick to.
Yeah, I'm with you, and we definitely are interested in MMA. I've watched quite a few of your MMA fights on YouTube, and you were a pretty scary guy back in the day when you were in the ring.
Well, you're too kind. Right, better. You see, the thing is that I basically relied on my old Sambo skills, and of course I did try to cross train, but I didn't have a proper camp and proper guidance. I think I might have done a little bit better if I did have those. I know if is the most regretful thing to say in life, and I don't regret fighting per se, but I wish I approached it a little bit smarter, so to speak.
That's really awesome that you would say that, because one of the biggest concepts of the creation of this podcast was how can we train smart so that we can train for the longest amount of time and be as effective as we can be for the longest amount of time as old rollers. And this is a selfish endeavor. I want to learn this for myself, and then I hope to share the wisdom that I gained from people like yourself with others. But if no one gets anything out of this but me, then I'll still consider it a success.
This is such a great question. Such a great question. Listen, when I was growing up, I was training 6 days a week, 3 of which were double headers, so 2 practices, morning and night.
Uh-huh.
And others were either morning or night. So 6 days out of the week, starting with 10 years old, that's pretty intense.
Uh-huh.
And, and 3 of them are double headers, so morning and night, not just morning or night. And on top of that, we still used to do some extra stuff. Like, for example, our coach was having us do 100 pull-ups and 200 push-ups over the course of the day.
Uh-huh.
So the pedigree was pretty serious, What was the original question?
I was just talking about the idea of training smart.
Yes.
Sorry, we had a little bit of a connectivity issue there.
I know, right? And we had a good start. So having a good start and good, being propelled into your sportive career is nice. But obviously, as you age, you have to adjust your training. I've been training pretty hard childhood habits up to age of maybe 40. And after 40, things are slowing down, and I acquired two major injuries. And I've been on a quest, successful so far, toning down and figuring out proper training when it's effective and fairly competitive, yet not detrimental to your health.
So talk about that quest through the injuries and also through the changes past 40.
Yeah, got you. Well, change number one was diet. Up to 35 or 35. So let's reel back. Up to 35, I was able to eat anything I want in any quantities, and
You lucky bastard.
yeah. Only to 35. So before practice, after practice, instead of practice, right before bed, like junk food. And after 35, I started to notice that no matter how hard I train, and I train pretty hard, if you don't eat right, things stick around. You get like a little belly or whatever, a little thickness that you really don't want to see around. So first thing was adjusting is not my training habits, but rather my eating habits and my resting habits more so.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, up to the age of 40, I trained a lot, twice a week. Twice a day, 5 to 6 days a week, twice a day, with a pretty hard volume, of work and everything else. And now I see that without any special supplements, it's very hard to maintain. uh, so I used to train as far as like jiu-jitsu and grappling and do extra workouts 2 or 3 times a week. And now I notice I dedicate my time more to technical training, more rolling or whatnot at different speeds. You roll down to whoever's level. And maybe after practice, I'll do some bridging, couple squats, couple swings, and couple pull-ups. And that routine has been working out for me. I don't kill myself like I absolutely was, and I felt it's the only way to progress. But now with age, I see it's not like the result, but more rather the maintenance is the key.
Yeah.
And
Yes, absolutely.
I feel being super regular, training almost every day, but at less intensity, is the key for 35 plus, years of age, old athletes, particularly grapplers.
So when you talk about less intensity, I think in strength training, most people probably have a pretty good, grasp on that. Like you bring down the weight and move at less of your 1 rep max. But sometimes it might be hard to interpret that for grappling training. So when you say,
if you're 35, right,
Mhm.
most likely it means you've been training for a certain amount of time. And at that point, you become very instinctive and very in tune with your body requests, like you know how far you can push yourself. So sometimes you're tired and you want to roll more rounds, and you can tell yourself, you know what, I can take that. And other times, because of your wisdom acquired through years of training and hours on the mat, you're like, you know what, I'm not being a pussy, but like I have to sit this one around out. I think
Sure.
all of inherently develop this kind of intelligence with age and experience.
Yeah. So you're kind of talking more from the weightlifting world. We might call that like self-directed training, or
Yeah.
where
That's
you're sensing like today's not the day. You just back off.
yes. And it's a funny. I totally understand. In a slippery, it's a slippery slope. So when motivation fails and discipline comes in, I can I can push myself. But once in a while, I'm like, you know what, I can do it, but I'd rather take a day off. I feel something not entirely kosher. I know my body so well. Like today is a good day to have a couple beers instead of training.
Hmm. Well, when we talked to Sambo Steve Kepfer, he told us about he told us about spending some time in Russia and some of the differences in training culture that he had experienced. And one thing he talked about was that training in Russia, there was a ton of grappling volume, but it was a lot of technical work, a lot of technique work, not just like clubbing each other and trying to get after each other, rolling a randori style.
Yeah.
And wanted to kind of get your take on maybe some of the differences in training culture in American gyms versus Russian, where you grew up, and what you take from each.
So listen, a little disclaimer. What I'm about to say is could not be generalized, because things vary. I mean, rather, it could be generalized vice versa. But I know some things could claim different, and depending on your school, traditions and training methods differ. But as far as like generic things, I can say that. Uh, let's say wrestling. Who's the icon of wrestling is Dan Gable, right? Dan
Sure.
Gable won world championship and Olympics, and he was known as a grinder. And
Hmm.
generally, that's what accepted as the only or one of the most acceptable work ethics, you know. But the fact is, you don't really have to be a grinder all the time. You know, sometimes you have to play and experiment. There is no one formula to success, or you can combine them a little bit. Of course, working hard is important,
Sure.
but like to kill yourself or haze yourself in a practice room is not necessary. And you know, like in Muay Thai, right, in Thai boxing,
Hmm.
boxers don't sport full contact all the time because they compete almost every weekend. So there's no reason to go hard at the gym. It's more pad work, conditioning, and play fight. So Russians do a lot of that. Like it's hard to describe, and it's like uh, both parties are very much involved, and they're usually very experienced, and they have like a perfect chemistry that could be bonded immediately between each other, feeding off each other. You know what I'm saying? So they can pick up a little bit or slack down and read off each other and have this nice, playful yet very effective sparring session. If it makes any sense.
That makes a ton of sense. I think we all we will find that partner who's kind of like our gym nemesis, but at the same time, he's the guy that pushes us, and we know that he or she, depending upon the situation, is gonna it's gonna be a really fun and instructive sparring session, but it
Yeah,
may be hard or soft just depending upon each other's mood. Like you're in tune.
it's always a bit of a fusion, man. You know, there's a flirt and it can go either way. Sometimes it's more playful, and sometimes it's more intense. As long as it's not spicy, as long as it's fluid, it could be intense. You know,
Hmm.
intensity is not always a bad thing. So, like, yes, but it only comes with when both participants are a experienced and b willing. You know.
Yeah, it takes that sensitivity from experience, and then also like the
Exactly.
maturity and willingness.
Yes,
Well,
maturity and
that's
perfect. And
yeah, that's sometimes I'm not tremendously experienced. I've only been training for about 5 years,
oh, really?
but sometimes yeah, and that's a big part of the impetus behind this is that I feel like because I started at 35 and I haven't been training long. I've got to pick up the pace and find ways to outsmart my 17-year-old
With age, hopefully comes wisdom. I'm glad you said that. Very often, I have like people when they're later or older in their life come to train, and they were like, I wish I wrestled or I wish I did this or that, and I'm like, do not ever think that. Like, it's good that you're aware that your life could have been, been in a different direction, but it's very counterproductive. There is a reason why you on this stage, on this step of your martial arts training, and enjoy the journey. Like if you look back, there's nothing there about regrets. So instead of enjoy the journey and look forward. So
Mhm.
if I may part that advice, I would advise you the same thing, man. Don't ever regret you didn't wrestle or did jiu-jitsu or whatever in high school. But instead, silver lining is just enjoy every day. To me, it's always about the journey, and the progress versus
Sure.
destination. Destination is sweet, like some kind of like tapping your arch nemesis in the gym. Is good, but once I step on the mat, I fell in love right away, and amount of love is the same today as it was 40 years ago. Like
Yeah.
I'm lucky like that. So somebody told me once, if I open a gym, I'll get burned out because my passion will turn into profession. But I cannot get enough. I love it.
Yeah, that's exciting to hear, because I think there's a whole lot of people with that same worry that once you start getting paid for something, you sort of stop loving it, and it's exciting to hear somebody say, "Hell no, I want more." Like,
No, yeah, once in a blue moon, I'll have to dig into discipline. But for the most part, like I go to bed and I think about what I'm going to be doing tomorrow, working out or teaching or training, you know.
Oh yeah, I do. And you know, I come at this from a, you know, like a completely non-martial background. Like I'm a total wimp, and so it's weird for me to think about the idea that I do the same thing. I go to bed thinking about how can I kick this guy's ass better tomorrow, you know, like, or how can I not get my ass kicked as bad. That's probably the more often.
Yeah, man, that's how you know you're a maniac, you know. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
it's crazy, and it's so fun to hear you say that because, like I said, the obsessiveness of this particular, you know, hobby or passion that we share is something that is also fairly universal. Once somebody gets in, you see them and they get past like the blue belt blues of jiu-jitsu or whatever, and they start to accept that there's going to be up days and down days, and they just go, you know, just completely insane, like, you know, studying YouTube on their break at work and stuff like that. It's pretty amazing.
Oh man, it's very enticing and very infectious. Absolutely. Um, yeah.
So to kind of, you know, maybe shift gears just a little bit, you're
Sure.
somebody that I've followed for a long time. I actually, it might be the very first instructional I ever bought was the Sambo Jiu-Jitsu Fusion. Um, I got the groundwork first and then the throws second one.
Mhm.
I did it backwards. But
It was
when we
3 volume set. It was leg locks, takedowns, and miscellaneous mat work.
Okay. So I got the miscellaneous mat work and the throws, and then I already had the Leglock one from
Mhm.
the DVDs like that I got off Amazon. It wasn't one of the. It was before Sambo Fusion.
Not Panther Production. Yeah. Shogun Media. Yes.
Yeah, and so that's why I hadn't gotten that one, but I liked the other two, and probably will wind up getting the Leglock one is at some point here in the near future anyway, because I'm obsessive too. It's I got to be honest. Uh, but I've followed you for a long time, and you will put, you know, videos on Instagram and stuff like that from some of your strength and conditioning, and you incorporate a lot of gymnastic movements. And so I wanted to kind of get your take on that because especially, you know, I think there's maybe a contingent of us old rollers that feel like gymnastics might be something that's a little risky for us to start implementing, and wanted to get your thoughts on all that.
Gotcha. Well, it could be risky, you know. Uh, oh, hopefully, the introduction is done with a proper coach or whatnot, or done very gradually, starting the slowest. If you learn by yourself through like YouTube tutorials or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, gymnastics and basic acrobatics is one of the basic preparations for all wrestlers, for all grappling styles: judo, sambo, jiu-jitsu, Greco-Roman freestyle in Soviet Union and like former Soviet republics. Okay, so it's one of the easiest things, and when you learn it as a kid, you don't have as much fear as an adult. You know
Sure.
that's such a huge benefit starting training as a young child. So basically, anybody who wrestled to any or grappled or did sambo or judo to any serious degree can do probably like a handspring, front flip, back flip, and basic bar tricks. Um, Obviously, amount of pull-ups you can do will not amount to your ability to escape from triangles. But it's still nice to be an athlete or whatnot. Nice to be in shape, and if anything, being able to do those basic gymnastic tricks make sure that you have basic coordination and mental fortitude. Those are two most important things in grappling and wrestling, particularly when it comes to more like high amplitude throws and more complex moves. You have to have balls to execute them and have some kind of coordination. For example, if you cannot do like a bridge, there is no sense to learn suplex. You know what I'm saying? So it goes
Mm-hmm.
back tuck or back handspring. If you cannot do back roll, right? One basic back roll, then a whole sequence of Sutemi Waza is out of your range, like Tomo Inage or Sumigaeshi. If you cannot
Yeah,
do squat or lunge, forget about shooting for singles, doubles, and fireman carries. So movement supersedes moves. So movement is like basic moving patterns, and moves are techniques. You know what I'm saying? If you cannot
I do.
you get thrown, you're probably going to get hurt. You know what I'm saying? So basic athletics give you, like I said, let me restate again, mental fortitude and basic coordination to do so. So that's why they're important. They're not a necessity, but right now I cannot train as I would want to, so I have to replicate some kind of movement. So I've been exercising. That's another thing about
Sure.
strength. Normally, my strength and conditioning is like secondary to my training after I got done with rolling a couple things. But now, since I cannot roll, then seats are reversed, so to speak. Now I do to a local high school with very few people there, very safe, social distancing, and I run about mile and a half to warm up. And then I do some bleachers run. I do bleachers speed ups and acceleration sprints. Then I do bleachers jumps, some lunges, elevated Bulgarian lunges. Then I'll do kettlebells and some pull-ups, And I did not really deviate for like month and a half from this workout, and I still love it. It covers all the basics things you need, and I keep it at the pace that is comfortable, so I still feel the benefit, yet don't kill myself because I train every day. That's enough. Would have tied up into strength and conditioning for older athletes.
Yeah, what you said there, you said two things that really stuck with me. The first was that movement precedes moves.
Yeah.
And the second was that you're never killing yourself on today's workout because you're going to get tomorrow's in.
Exactly. I'm still sore to a degree, but it's not like I have to take CBD and ice bath to restore myself, I certainly do workload. I track my weight before and after the workout, see how many pounds I lost, track my heartbeat. And it's, it's a productive workout. I'm 45, so, I'm golden.
Yeah. I think what you're doing there is very intelligent. And one of the themes that has sort of come out of these interviews is that as a person is older, typically we start to have a career, we have a family, our level of responsibilities changes. And so we have to be more and more deliberate in how every minute of training is spent. We can't spend it just like screwing around. It's got to be pinpointed.
Life is like a pizza, you have to have equal amount of slices for each, like, one for wife and kids, one for training, one for work. Everybody got to be involved. And because the slices become so tiny because of your responsibilities grow, you have to make it worth your while, You cannot waste. You cannot have a luxury of a 20-year-old wasting your workouts and doing too much or not enough. Just the right amount.
That's that concept there that you said, just the right amount. That really rings true with so much what we've heard, because the kind of a recurring theme has been this concept of efficiency, which is just enough, but never less than that. Not more than enough, but not less either.
That's right. And
that's in regard to strength and conditioning, and also your rolling. Sorry.
Yeah. No. Sorry. Absolutely. I did not mean to. It just, I want to reel it back a little bit. That goes to that, you inherited intelligence as an athlete to listen to your body, Yes, that's when when it's not enough or just the right amount.
So when we think about that, for the MAC culture of every gym is different, and what is the culture that you try to bring to your gym, and how does that apply? Like, because I know that if you have some professionals my age or older, and obviously you're 45, so we're pretty similar in age, you're going to be able to cater to that general crowd. What do you do? Do you change the training in any way, or is it pretty much like this is how we train for everybody? Are there any changes that you make for your different students?
No, of course. That's such a good question. Number one, I grew up. Sambo is very militant, and I responded very well to this kind of learning. And Brazilian jiu-jitsu in its true essence from Brazil is complete opposite. It's very relaxed, So my whole is fusion. So I truly try to draw the best elements from both and try to see what works. And of course, like I have some general standards for students, but no, like any good coach, I observe strengths and weaknesses and I try to address them. There are some things in grappling that are absolute do's and others that are absolute do not. And the third ones are that you can improvise. Like, for example, if a wrestler comes to train to me and a wrestler's goal is to compete immediately,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I want him to get generally better, but right now he wants to win, and I want to address the winning. So the first two things I will teach a wrestler is front headlocks, right? Like anacondas, Darcy's, Spiro and neckties, because if somebody shoots on him, he probably would be better, can stuff the takedown, get the headlock, and get one of the front headlock struggles. Or I teach him leg locks. Again, only if he wants to win right away, because most likely he'll get somebody down with some kind of single or double leg, and the first victim is the legs.
Sure.
Later on, technique will come, and I'll teach passing, sweeping, setups, gi grappling, throws and takedowns, yada, yada, yada. But I will address immediate goals. All right. And some people want to be in there for self defense. I will kind of redirect training there. Some people want to be there in shape, and some people want to be for special action, aspect. Sorry. So, although general training is like generic, so to speak, but then I always will find time for any particular athlete to address their needs, whether it to be social, self-defense, or general fitness or whatever. I will always note what the student needs versus what I want to teach him.
Sure. Sure. You know, um, something that kind of brings up when you have, let's say you have an older gentleman or a female, maybe 40s or early 50s, and their interest is more fitness or self-defense. And in that same class, you got a 25-year-old who just, he finished college 2 years ago and he wants to get into competing. How do you structure your class so that both of those crowds can get good training and advancement?
Listen, it's a big collective, right? So my best guy, my best guy at my gym, I want him to be able to go with a quote unquote roided wrestler or a soccer mom. That's my ideal, a gym right hand man. So generally we'll warm up, and I always say if something is beyond your doing, do not do it. You know what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
I genuinely mean it. I'm not trying to seclude anybody. And people here, some people have to sit out part of the warm up. Then we'll work on some fairly, simple techniques. And if there's any throw involved, we have crash pads. Crash pads is such
Mm-hmm.
a gosh darn good tool when you want to learn throws, specifically in the older age and not being an athlete or whatnot. And everybody seems to get pretty well outside of like winning medals and being tough or whatever. I want my gym to feel like a family to everybody. And so far, I think I've been successful. That's like one of my most proudest coaches moments, creating a family atmosphere. So
Yeah.
everybody can work with each other. However, when we spar, maybe that's when the separation comes. That's when I put two competitors together, or if I have somebody who's very good versus somebody who's not very experienced yet, I will put a more experienced guy in a better position, a worse position. So that's what I do. There is always a way to gauge the level disparity in a room. Sometimes it's hard, but it's always possible.
It sounds to me like you're paying attention, kind of applying that same principle of paying attention to your body, as you mature for the strength and conditioning, and you're paying attention to the room, just reapplying that same philosophy and saying, what do these people need and how can I set them up to get it?
Exactly. I'm there. Listen, I do love to train selfishly, and I do like to get roles with tough guys. But honestly, after all said and done, I'm there to serve my students. They trust me with their money, right? With their time, and with my experience, with what I can teach them. I have huge shoes to fill in. So I owe to them for all those reasons to pay detail to every single individual, whether it's a kick-ass athlete that's going to win me medals, or I have like people who are in the late 50s, early 60s to train. I owe them the same. I do love it. I love it when I teach a technique to a black belt who's sometimes even better than me, and they say, "Wow, man, Vlad, that's awesome. I love that." But more than anything, I like the aha experience from a white belt. You know,
Mm-hmm.
can share a piece of advice, and not always even technical. Sometimes it's even like life worth. You know, like maybe you ache in jiu-jitsu or sambo or grappling to life, and you combine those experiences and you part with advice, and it makes sense to them. And like, oh my god, you know, I never thought of it this way. That aha experience is what keeps me motivated as a coach.
That's a beautiful sentiment. I think that probably speaks to why your video content is so good. Because I can tell you, like I said, that's your Sambo Jiu-Jitsu Fusion video is one of the first ones that I ever purchased. And 5 years later, I still use a lot of the stuff that I got from that. And also the philosophy behind it is something that I have integrated into what I do. So it's not, if I'm not using specific moves from it, I'm still trying to act in the way that you kind of espouse in that series.
I'm glad you were able to find something useful.
Yeah, I definitely had some aha moments. The specifically that armbar escape drill that you do in the man. I have a partner that I warm up with doing that, and I've gotten so much mileage out of those escapes.
Listen, it saved my ass so many times. And
Yeah.
you know, I teach my athletes, if you got caught but your hands were linked, there's no reason, you know, like if you got caught right away, you know, tap, of course. But if you got caught and your hands were locked, there's no reason why you should not escape. But then to my top athlete, I will teach the opposite. You know, I'll say, listen, if you caught somebody and you secure them in place, there's no reason why you should not tap it. So it's completely like opposite, you know, dualistic belief. Yet it's very sincere. I truly believe in both of those statements.
Well, I think the truth of that is that there's no such thing as a move that can't be countered. Because if there was, everything would just be a race to see who could do that move first.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if you're really good at something, it's really fucking hard to counter it.
Yeah, 100%.
Let's see. We've actually gone really fast. We've been very efficient, to use the terms of this conversation. We've gone over a lot of the stuff that I really wanted to get your take on. For my old rollers out there, do you have any generic advice, like general advice of, things that maybe you wish you had known when you were younger in training that would have paid off now as you're a little bit older?
Diet and recovery, you know, like I'm happy I trained my balls off, so to speak, and like kind of punished my body to a degree, never to a degree of damage, but like, you know, punished it. And like older, you know, when I got older, I chilled it down or whatever. So the only thing I would, I wish I did differently, like in MMA, I wish I had a camp, or
Mm-hmm.
general, wish I had like proper diet and recovery guidance.
That makes perfect sense.
Thinking here, I'm pretty happy how life turned out, you know, and but if I had to pick something, you know, that would be that.
Well, I think, that would be great advice for anybody at any age is, eat healthfully and, put your energy into recovery so that you can have more training time.
I know it's probably so simple and so textbook to some people, but just like basics win fights, basics good habits in training too, you know.
Oh,
So
yes, sir. I do.
they textbook, they so glossy because they so textbook, you know, they're so shiny, but you still have to do it, you know. And it's hydration, recovery, and this kind of stuff.
Well, I tell you what, Vlad, if some folks wanted to learn more about you or reach out to you, how would they best be able to find out more about you?
You can check my website, www.sambofusion.com. Check out my YouTube channel. I've been a little bit inactive due to coronavirus. Not in the gym that often. It's Sambo Fusion, and you can check out my Instagram account. I post a lot of cool stuff, I think, and it's Sambo_Fusion. So
I'll agree with you that your Instagram has some cool stuff on it. I like following that.
that's right. You know, being older, I'm not as competitive as some other people, so I try to coach more, stay relevant, and live by example. You know, like
Hmm.
false modesty aside, not all 45-year-olds can do things I can do, and I can. My goal is honestly not to show off, but inspire and teach. You know, if somebody gets a little spark after what they see me do, I'd be so happy. It's one of those high experience satisfactions. You know.
Yeah, and that's why we wanted to have you on. Is that uh, I personally have already taken up trying to get more gymnastic stuff into my training. Now
Yeah,
I'm not gonna be a gymnast, but
of course.
to be able to competently move in 3 dimensions is something that I think is valuable for anyone that does any sport. And multiple studies have shown that gymnasts, if you take people who do gymnastics, they learn just about any other sport faster than anybody else does.
I totally agree. It's a great base to any sport, and particularly any combat sport. Gymnastics outstanding. GSP, you know, GSP is a prime example. He implemented it, and I feel physically great rolling. And you know, gymnastics and basic acrobatics is always part of my warm up and training routine.
Well, we're gonna post the link to the Sambo Fusion in the show notes, and then if anybody has interest in finding your YouTube channel, we'll be able to redirect them in the notes to the video, so that'll be available to them too. Thanks so much for your time and your expertise.
Thank you for you, brother. I appreciate the attention and spreading the word. Thank you.
All right, so we'll go ahead and end.